everyone, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video we have a flower letter. This is flower letter number 21. So I'm super excited to jump into this one. As you guys know, the last letter we got was a newspaper. It was the town crier talking about all the people that went missing, and of course it was everybody. All of our main characters pretty much have come up missing. Gambit was looking for Matt, they kidnapped Lily, Sam was missing, like there was just a whole bunch of stuff going on. The White Widow, they think, has Gambit, perhaps. There's just a lot of things going on in the last letter, so I can't wait to get into this one. So let's open this one up. Okay, so looks like we have our business card on the bottom. So here is our business card. It says the forest flowers perfumed. So this is looks like perhaps a perfume or a cologne card. Let's see. It says Singler Brothers grocery flower canned goods. Okay, so it's basically like a merchandise place. They would sell different stuff, but I do like the front of this. They kind of look like two little gnomes or two little like porcelain dolls. Really like that. So okay, so that was our business card that we have been collecting throughout this letters. This looks like an extra, so I bet this is from Matt. Oh, we have a very pretty lady here. Yep, here's our map on the back right here. Talking about where he's been. So we're going to wait and we'll read this one last. And we have a letter. So we're just going to jump straight into this. It looks like it's saying it's to Bill. So it must be Matt writing to Bill this time. Looks like we're going to have about 3 pages, I want to say. Looks about like it. And it looks like he's got a lot to say, guys. So let's get right into this one. Okay, so it says, February 18th, 1885, Dear Bill. Well, I suppose this would be one heck of a case to end my career on if I cared one bit about fame, fortune, and the like. All's well that ends well, as the old bard says, and this definitely ended better than expected. Honestly, Bill, when I let those stars slip that sleeping draft into my coffee, I wasn't sure I'd ever wake up. But as Belladonna promised me, one good turn deserves another, and they sure came through on their end. I'll start from the beginning because I'm pretty sure you're wondering what in tarnation I'm babbling on about. Especially since we established the fact that the stars are innocent. Well, it turns out the jailer in Spring City had a mind to collect the bounty on the stars as soon as I was ready to turn my back. Thankfully, Lafayette Pedersen, my friend in Spring City, made me aware of the fact, so I had to pretend to go in halves with the jailer on the bounty. He agreed to wait until at least March before letting Ribby know he had them, because I convinced him Ribby would eventually raise the bounty again, so we'd walk away even wealthier if we just waited a little longer. Once I received the telegram from Sam Parson about my Lily and Miss Lottie, Lizzie's sister, being taken hostage by Ribby, all bets were off. I knew I was going to have to think as clever as the stars in order to get the stars out of Spring City without the jailer thinking I double-crossed him, and to get them free in enough time to get all of us over to Frisco before the 13th. I'll tell you, when I told the stars that Ribby had their aunt, I was a little frightened they might finally become the outlaws everybody already thinks they are. All 3 of them reminded me more than I care to admit of Lizzie when she was in one of her moods. By the end of our conversation, the stars and I came up with a fairly risky, on my part, plan. It was my turn to be on jail duty that night, so after getting the plants and powder they asked me to gather from their saddlebags, I turned a blind eye while they mixed up a sleeping potion. The plan was that I'd leave my coffee cup unattended and positioned close enough to their cell that one of them could easily slip a bit of it into my cup. I'd also position my chair close enough within reach of the cell that they could reach the keys and make a break for it when I was finally unconscious. They'd be free and no one in Spring City could say I was in cahoots, since everyone believes the stars are deadly with their poisons. They'd just be grateful I was still alive. Well, everything must have gone off without a hitch because the stars are gone when I woke up several hours later and I was still alive. After thinking about lucky stars, I made the pretext of going after them. It wasn't much of a pretext because I was in fact going after them. They had a good 6 hours on me, so I had to skedaddle if we were both going to show up in Frisco by Rigby's deadline. Besides, the one thing I'd forgotten to discuss with the stars was where Rigby could have taken my Lily and Miss Lottie. His ransom note implied it was obvious, so I assumed the stars were privy to it. Thankfully, the stars were thinking the same thing I was. They waited for me just out of sight of Stretz Junction, which is between Manti and Spring City, when we rode the rest of the way to Frisco together and met up with Sam's deputy, who led us just outside of town in the early morning on the 11th, where Sam was waiting. Ever since he sent me the telegram, Sam had been in and out of town, scouring the outskirts of Frisco for any signs of Rigby, Gambit, and the ladies. He was spread pretty thin, trying to keep him any harm from coming to Miss Katie, Lily's sister, as well. Thankfully, the stars knew of an old mine shaft on the other side of Frisco Peak. They seemed certain Rigby had taken Lily and Miss Lottie there, so we let them lead the way. There was an awful lot of steep climbing to get up the old shaft. It was well into the late afternoon before we found any sort of a trail. Once we did, it was awful grown over. If there hadn't been any signs of someone passing through fairly recently, I would have thought that a bit of wilderness would have been tough for 100 years. As it was, the bright stars, Sam and I had to follow single file that little trail we could find all the way up to the west side of Frisco Peak. Sure enough, we finally came to the very old mine shaft the stars mentioned. It looked so old there was no doubt in my mind it had been mined by de Rivera himself. The stars didn't wait for Sam and me. They just headed straight into the shaft, pistols at the ready. Before Sam and I could even follow them in, they came back out. It was empty. Belladonna pointed up the trail a little to what looked like a small crack in the mountainside. Then she asked if we wanted to see where the treasure was really hidden. She motioned us onward, warning us to tread lightly, as the trail was mighty weather-beaten and barely there in several parts. When we reached what first appeared just a small crack in the mountain, we turned a corner, and the crack fanned out into a narrow cave entrance just wide enough to fit the shoulder width of a single man. Just as we were about to follow the stars into the cave, we heard some stirring down below. Sam had been getting an itching suspicion we had been following during our entire trip up the mountain. We kept checking the path behind us, however, and every time we did, nothing was there. We checked one last time after hearing the noise again, but surmised it was a bit of gravel sliding down the mountain due to the trail being so battered and worn. After heading into the cave, it took our eyes a while to adjust, but as we crept along that narrow passageway, it didn't take long to realize the stars wasn't kidding about it being the treasure's real hiding place. No fun in here, I swear to you. Every available corner or wall in that passage was stacked with piles and piles of raw silver nuggets, nuggets as far as my naked eye could see. We crept along that narrow passage for a solid 10 minutes when suddenly the narrow passage turned into a good-sized room. The silver was piled all the way to the ceiling in there, and it was no small room. There had been more silver in that cave than the Horn Silver Mine had produced since the day it was discovered. For me, however, the only treasure I cared about at the center of the room, with Gambit's pistol pointing at her pretty head. Now, I'm a man who prides himself on self-control. You know that. But when I saw the state of my Lily, a cut on her left cheek and her eyes blackened and bruised, something inside me took over. If it hadn't been for Sam's hand on my shoulder, I don't know what I would have done next. Lily, bless her heart, gave me a brave smile, letting me know she was all well enough. Miss Lottie, on the other hand, was barely conscious, with her head in Lily's lap. Knowing that heart of gold of hers, she probably took all the worst blows while shielding Lily, and the way she's been doing for her Vanderbilt ladies all these years. Rigby, never one to get his hands dirty directly, sat over in the corner. But when he saw the stars were with us, he stood and demanded the map. Belladonna had her own demands, however, and insisted he release the ladies first. Rigby only laughed. He really is a varmint. Then produced a gun and said he had no intention of handing over anyone, with or without the map, that the only way to ensure his treasure stayed a secret was to do away with all witnesses at once. He pointed his gun at Lily then, and Bill, I couldn't let that happen. So I'd go for the man just as he pulled the trigger. Thankfully, Sam had the same idea, and Ruby's bullet only ricocheted off the cave walls, barely skimming my shoulder. The next moment, all hell broke loose. The Stars, Ruby, and Gambit were firing at each other. Gun smoke was everywhere. Sparks was flying every which way. I could hardly see as it was, and even as I was scrambling to shield them, I was terrified one of those bullets would ricochet and hit Lily or Miss Lottie. Before any real harm was done, something quite extraordinary happened. First, there was a deafening boom. It didn't just shake the cave, it shook the whole mountain, and to its roots. I'd rage. The next moment, the floor of the cave split open, and old Ruby started shrieking like a banshee as half the treasure started sliding away right before his eyes. Sam and I grabbed Lily and Miss Lottie and hightailed it out of there with Gambit hot on our heels. None of us had any idea what had just happened. He had no idea that the Horn Silver Mine, the very lifeblood of Frisco, had just collapsed on the other side of the mountain, causing the whole valley to shake. I kid you not. It was as if God himself was pouring down his wrath on the whole valley. The earth kept jittering for several seconds after we got out of that cave. Sam and I crowded around a sturdy tree with Lily and Miss Lottie, and then we hung on for our dear life, hoping the trail didn't give way beneath our feet. When the shaking finally stopped, Ruby came stumbling out of the cave, his pockets full of silver nuggets. The Stars went with him, nor had they followed us out. Sam and I were about to head back into the caves to find them when we heard a gunshot. It didn't come from inside the caves. I looked at Lily, making sure she hadn't been shot. She only shook her head and pointed. A few paces down the path from the cave stood a woman, dressed all in white, holding a smoking pistol. "The White Widow," Lily whispered. The woman was all done up in white makeup and finery, her veil flopping in the wind. No wonder everyone thought she was a ghost. She looked just like a banshee. When I finally gathered my wits, I followed the direction her pistol was pointing and found Gambit on the other end. He stood there in shock for several seconds, blood pooling on his chest, then he fell. Sam and I rushed to see if there was anything to be done, but we both knew the wound was fatal. The White Widow slipped out of sight, back down the path. Sam was about to go after her, but before he could, there was another bout of shaking. It braced Lily against the mountain, shielding her from any falling rocks. That's when we heard the scream. When the shaking finally stopped, we hurried down the path. Miss Lottie got there first, and pointing over a particular eroded edge of the path, and ran right along the steep drop, and there at the bottom of the narrow ravine lay the flesh and blood body of the White Widow. It was one of the most tragic things I've ever seen. Now, I'm not usually haunted by sights from the awful things I come across as a lawman. Guess I just learned to block them out, but knowing what drove her to those extremes and the look of the face of the poor woman, all broken up at the bottom of the cliff, will haunt me for the rest of my life. We never did find the Stars, I'm afraid. We couldn't get Ruby to admit shooting them, and he's not the sort to pass up the opportunity to claim victory over such worthy foes. So they must have fallen with their treasure. It's an awful shame. Miss Lottie is beside herself. They were the last of her kin. My Lily's been doing her best to comfort the good lady. We have Ruby in custody. Sam and I are leaving Frisco tomorrow to take him to the authorities in Salt Lake City, where he can stand trial for his crimes without any interference from McDonald. Once I'm done in Salt Lake City, I'm heading back to Frisco to marry my Lily. And that, my friend, will terminate my contract with the Pinkerton Detective Agency once and for all. I've found some of that good life we've always yammered about, and I mean to start living it as soon as I can. I'm mighty grateful to you, Bill. If you're ever out in California, be sure to send word. Yours, Matthew Hickman. Now you guys know that down here on the bottom that it talks about if there's any highlighted words or anything, you guys can get onto theirflowerletter.com and you can learn more about it if you want. Okay guys, so that was our letter, and I just have to say, whoa. There was so much going on there. I mean, we still don't know who the White Widow was. I mean, they found her body, but nobody could really identify her. So that's still a mystery. I was really into this story. This was really great. And I, for one, don't think the stars went down with their treasure. I think they slipped out quietly, and we may or may not hear from them at some point. I kind of hope so. I think they're too smart women to have went down with their treasure. I am really glad that Lily is safe. I'm glad that Matt is going to come back and they're going to get married. I can't wait to hear about that. We do have the map that's here, and this is just a blown up version of it. I did go ahead and just kind of marked it on our map here for you guys. I just went ahead and did it just to kind of save the tediousness of just having to go through and look for everything. So I did go ahead and just add it onto our big map. And I did just want to show you guys that. And I'll show you the map just one more time in case you guys want to look at it. But on this side, this talks about Matt's kind of travels. This is kind of like, maybe like a little journal to himself or something. So we're going to read a little bit about this. We're going to find out maybe who this is. Not real sure. Maybe he'll tell us in this letter. So it says from January 5th to February 20th of 1884. And this says 6 of 6, so this should be the last one of these that we are getting. It says, I caught the stars at 9 Mile Canyon and brought them into Spring City. I know they're innocent. They know I know they're innocent. And now it's a matter of keeping them safe. There's plenty of folks out there eager to hand these ladies over for the reward, including the jailer here in Spring City. But I don't mean for that to happen. I had to do some fancy footwork to keep them here a little longer. I'm eager to hear their side of the story from their own mouths. Just got word from Sam. Lily's in trouble, and so is Miss Lottie. The stars are rip-roaring to bust themselves out, but I've convinced them to wait a moment. We have a plan. It's a risky one, but if the ladies are kind of ladies I think they are, it might just work. It's finally over. Lily is safe. Miss Lottie will make a full recovery, and Ruby is behind bars, where he belongs. Awaiting a fair trial in Salt Lake behind bars, where he belongs. From what Sam and I can see, all that silver treasure is gone. Got buried during the mine collapse. I'd say it was a pity, but after all the lives lost over it, I can't regret it. Bill had told me my last case as a Pinkerton would end this way. I wouldn't have believed him. I do feel I might more at ease in mine where Lizzie is concerned. I couldn't save her from the likes of Rigby, but I was able to save her sister and her nieces. My only regret is that poor wretch, the White Widow. She was never a ghost, not really, but I suspect her face will haunt me till the day I die. The stars are gone. Miss Lottie is back to Mother Henny and doing good, and my Lily is more bright and lovely than the day I first saw her at that train depot back in Chicago. The wedding day is set 1 month from now, so I can do no more proper courting on my little fury Irish girl. Mama is coming all the way from Pennsylvania to meet her, and I expect Bill will make an appearance as well. It'll be a mighty fine day. So that's super cute, and so this is what the White Widow looks like. So they still really don't know who she is. I, for one, had my suspicions, but that all got knocked out. So you guys do let me know what you think about this letter. We are getting closer to wrapping it up. We only have a couple more letters left to wrap up this story, and hopefully we can start a new one next year. You guys let me know if you have any concerns, any questions, anything, just leave it in the comments and I will try to get to it and answer it the best that I can. And as you guys know, I do enjoy this letter very, very much. This has been one of my favorite ones. Can't wait to continue this and many, many other stories. And I will hopefully see you all back here in my next letter. Bye!